The text arrived at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, and it changed everything. Not because of what it said, but because of who wasn't supposed to have my wife's number saved as baby girl with 3 heart emojis. I'm Mark Bishop, 39 years old, project manager at a tech firm in Hartford, Connecticut. I fix problems for a living. Networks that crash, servers that fail, systems that betray their users. Turns out, marriages aren't much different. My wife Julia had been acting strange for months. Late showings for her real estate clients, hushed phone conversations that ended when I walked into the room, and a sudden interest in gym memberships despite never setting foot in our home treadmill. The suburban housewife transformation was complete. Designer workout clothes, expensive highlights, and a new attitude that screamed, "I deserve better than this." The text was simple. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear that red thing I bought you." The sender? Troy Callahan. Our neighbor. The guy who borrowed my hedge trimmer last summer and never returned it. The same Troy who brought beer to our barbecues and complimented Julia on her potato salad while I manned the grill like some oblivious fool. I sat in my home office, staring at the phone I'd found hidden in Julia's makeup drawer. A burner phone. Who needs a burner phone unless they're planning something they shouldn't be planning? My hands shook as I scrolled through months of messages. The progression was nauseating. It started innocent enough. "Thanks for showing me that property," evolved into, "You look amazing in that dress," and eventually became graphic descriptions of activities that definitely weren't happening in our bedroom. The worst part? The timeline. Every late showing, every girls' night out, every business dinner had been documented in explicit detail. Julia wasn't just cheating. She was documenting it like some twisted diary. I screenshot everything. 47 messages that painted a picture of a woman who checked out of our marriage months ago but forgot to mention it to her husband. At 3:22 a.m., I sent Julia a text from my phone. "Found your other phone. We need to talk." The response was immediate. "I can explain everything." "I'm sure you can," I typed back. "But I don't need your explanation. I need you gone." My phone rang 17 times in the next 5 minutes. I let every call go to voicemail. Each message was more frantic than the last, ranging from angry accusations to tearful apologies to threats about lawyers and divorce settlements. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Julia stumbled through the front door at 4 a.m., mascara streaked down her face, still wearing the red dress Troy had requested. She looked like a woman who'd just realized her carefully constructed lie was crumbling. "Mark, please, let me explain," she said, dropping her purse by the door like she'd done 1,000 times before. Except this time, I wasn't the same husband who'd pick it up and hang it in the closet. "Explain what, exactly?" I asked, holding up the burner phone. "Explain how you've been meeting Troy at the Marriott downtown every Thursday for 3 months. Explain how you told him our bedroom was disappointing and our marriage was a mistake you were fixing. Or maybe explain how you were planning to take half of everything I've worked for while screwing our neighbor." Julia's face went pale. She'd underestimated me, assumed I was the same passive guy who'd ignored the warning signs for months. She was wrong. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered. "It looks like my wife is a cheater and a liar," I said. "And based on these messages, it looks exactly like what it is." I'd always been good at solving problems. This was just another system that needed fixing. The difference was, this time, I wasn't going to restore it to working order. I was going to tear it down completely. Julia tried to grab the phone from my hands, but I'd already backed up everything to 3 different cloud accounts. Her desperation was almost pathetic. "You don't understand," she said. "Troy and we connect. He gets me in ways you never have." "He gets you, all right," I replied. "In hotel rooms I'm paying for with the credit card you share with your husband." That's when Julia's tears turned to anger. You're pathetic, Mark. You've always been pathetic. Do you think I wanted this life, this house, this boring suburban existence with a man who thinks changing the channel is an adventure? I smiled. Actually smiled. Because in that moment, Julia had just given me everything I needed to justify what came next. You're right, I said. You don't want this life, so you won't have it. I walked upstairs, leaving Julia standing in our foyer, probably wondering what I meant. She'd find out soon enough. In my office, I opened my laptop and started making calls. First to my lawyer, then to my bank, then to my brother Pete, who'd been waiting for an excuse to dislike Julia for years. By sunrise, I'd changed the locks, transferred our joint accounts to my personal account, and started the paperwork to remove Julia from the mortgage. The house, the cars, the savings, all legally mine, thanks to a prenuptial agreement Julia had signed without reading because she was too excited about the wedding to pay attention to details. Julia pounded on the front door at 7 a.m., screaming about her rights and threatening legal action. I opened the door just wide enough to hand her a box of her belongings and a printed copy of our prenup. Your clothes are at the Marriott, I said. Room 237. Troy's expecting you. The look on her face was worth every sleepless hour I'd spent planning her exit from my life. But this wasn't revenge. This was just the beginning. Julia's first mistake was thinking I'd roll over and play the victim. Her second mistake was underestimating how well I knew our social circle. Her third mistake was trusting Troy Callahan to be smarter than a gym rat with commitment issues. I spent the next week playing the perfect wronged husband. Quiet, dignified, hurt, but not bitter. I let our friends draw their own conclusions when Julia didn't show up to book club or missed her standing tennis date with the girls. Natalie Henderson, Julia's best friend and the neighborhood gossip queen, cornered me at the grocery store on Thursday morning. Mark, honey, where's Julia been? She missed our mani-pedi appointment yesterday, and she's not answering her phone. I arranged my face into the expression of a man trying to hold it together. She's staying somewhere else right now, Natalie. We're having some problems. Natalie's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Nothing made her happier than being the first to know about marital drama. Oh, sweetie, what happened? You two seemed so happy at the Hendersons' barbecue last month. I'd rather not get into details, I said, loading organic vegetables into my cart like a man trying to take better care of himself. But I found out she's been seeing someone else, someone we both know. I watched Natalie's brain start spinning. She'd have this information distributed to every woman in our subdivision before dinner time. Who? She whispered, leaning closer. I hesitated, letting her think I was debating whether to tell her. Troy Callahan, I have proof. Natalie gasped so loud that Mrs. Chen from the pharmacy aisle turned to look. Troy? But he's married to that sweet girl. What's her name? Amanda, I supplied. Yeah, she doesn't know yet. That afternoon, I drove to Troy's gym. The fitness factory was exactly the kind of place you'd expect Troy to spend his time. Mirrors everywhere, protein shake bar, and enough testosterone to fuel a small army. I found Troy at the bench press, grunting through a set that was probably 20 pounds more than he could actually handle. His form was terrible, but his ego was intact. Hey, Mark, he called out when he saw me, wiping sweat from his forehead with a towel that had seen better days. Didn't know you were a member here. Just signed up, I lied smoothly. Figured it was time to get in shape. Julia's always talking about how great this place is. Troy's face flickered with something, guilt, maybe, or just the realization that he'd been caught in his own web. Yeah, Julia's great, he said, not meeting my eyes. She's got good taste in gyms. Among other things, I replied, letting the comment hang in the air between us. I spent an hour at the gym, learning Troy's routine, his schedule, his habits. He worked out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 p.m. He always used the same locker, number 247. He always ordered the same protein shake, chocolate with extra creatine. And he always spent 20 minutes in the sauna afterward, probably texting my wife. That evening, I called my brother Pete. "I need a favor," I said. "About time," Pete replied. "I never liked that woman. What do you need?" Pete was a contractor, built like a linebacker, and had the kind of straightforward personality that made complicated people uncomfortable. Julia had always found excuses to avoid family gatherings when Pete would be there. "I need you to be at my house tomorrow afternoon around 3. Julia's going to come by to pick up more of her stuff, and I want a witness." "You got it," Pete said. "Want me to bring the boys?" The boys were Pete's crew, 3 guys who looked like they could bench press a pickup truck and enjoyed making cheating wives uncomfortable. "Just you," I said. "I don't want to overwhelm her." Friday afternoon, Julia arrived at exactly 3:15, probably hoping to avoid any confrontation. She looked tired, older somehow, like the weight of her lies was finally catching up with her. She had a key, but it didn't work anymore. After 5 minutes of jiggling the lock, she rang the doorbell. Pete answered the door. "Hey there, Julia," he said in his most pleasant voice. "Mark's not here right now." "Who are you to tell me I can't enter my own house?" Julia snapped, trying to push past him. "Well, according to the paperwork Mark showed me, it's not your house anymore," Pete replied, not moving from the doorway. "Something about a prenup and adultery clauses. But hey, I'm just a contractor. What do I know about legal stuff?" I watched from the upstairs window as Julia's face went through several expressions: confusion, anger, realization, panic. "That's impossible," she said. "I have rights." "Sure you do," Pete agreed. "Somewhere else. Mark left some boxes for you on the porch." 3 boxes. Everything Julia owned that wasn't purchased with my money, wasn't a gift from my family, or wasn't part of the life she'd decided to throw away. Julia grabbed the boxes and loaded them into her car, a car that was registered in my name, insured under my policy, and financed through my credit union. As she drove away, I texted her, "Car needs to be returned by Sunday. It's not yours." Her response was immediate. "You can't do this to me." "Already did," I replied. But I wasn't done. Not even close. That weekend, I created a group chat with our closest mutual friends, the couples we'd socialized with for years, the people who'd attended our wedding, the neighbors who'd watched our marriage from the outside and assumed we were happy. I called it transparency and included screenshots of Julia's most damning messages with Troy. Not the graphic ones. I wasn't trying to humiliate her completely, just enough to make sure everyone knew the truth. The responses were immediate and exactly what I'd expected: shock, support for me, and condemnation for Julia. Within hours, Julia was uninvited from 3 upcoming social events and blocked from the Neighborhood Wives group chat. Sunday evening, Julia returned the car. She looked defeated, driving a rental economy sedan that was a far cry from the luxury SUV she'd grown accustomed to. "Mark, please," she said when I met her in the driveway. "Can we talk about this like adults?" "Adults don't cheat on their spouses," I replied, taking the keys from her hand. "Adults don't lie for months about where they're spending their time. Adults don't plan to steal half of everything their partner worked for while screwing the neighbor." "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," she said, tears starting to flow again. "How was it supposed to happen, Julia? Were you going to ask for a divorce after you'd hidden all our assets? Were you going to take the house and leave me with nothing while you played house with Troy?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to stay away from me, away from my house and away from my friends. You're going to figure out your own life without using mine as a safety net. And you're going to learn what it feels like to face consequences for your choices." Julia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What about Troy?" I smiled. What about him? She didn't understand yet, but she would. Troy Callahan was about to learn that actions have consequences, and some consequences are more creative than others. Monday morning, I implemented Phase 2 of what I'd started calling Operation Accountability. Troy Callahan was about to discover that seducing married women came with a price. I'd spent Sunday researching Troy's habits, his schedule, his weaknesses. The man was predictable. Gym at 6 p.m., protein shake afterward, 20 minutes in the sauna, then home to his wife Amanda, who worked late shifts as a nurse and rarely questioned his whereabouts. Troy's biggest weakness wasn't his ego or his marriage, it was his stomach. The man had digestive issues that he'd complained about at every neighborhood barbecue for the past 2 years. Lactose intolerant, sensitive to artificial sweeteners, and prone to what he called stress stomach during busy periods at work. I arrived at the fitness factory at 5:45 p.m., carrying a gym bag and wearing workout clothes I'd bought that morning. The teenage kid working the front desk barely looked up when I flashed my membership card. Troy's locker was in the back row, just like I'd observed. Number 247, combination lock that he never bothered to scramble properly. I could see the numbers from the wear pattern on the dial, 4721. Probably his birthday or anniversary. Inside his locker hung his work clothes, his wallet, and his post-workout protein powder. The same chocolate creatine blend he ordered every session, stored in a clear plastic container with his name written in black marker. I replaced his protein powder with a mixture I'd prepared at home, chocolate protein powder mixed with sugar-free gummy bears. Lots of sugar-free gummy bears, the kind that came with warning labels about digestive consequences if consumed in large quantities. Troy arrived right on schedule, nodded at me like we were old gym buddies, and proceeded with his usual routine. Bench press, squats, bicep curls, the same sequence he'd followed every session I'd observed. After his workout, Troy mixed his protein shake with the enthusiasm of a man who'd earned his reward. He drank the entire thing while chatting with his gym buddy Phil about weekend plans and work stress. I finished my own workout and headed to the parking lot, where I had a perfect view of the gym's front entrance. I didn't have to wait long. Troy burst through the doors at 7:23 p.m., moving faster than I'd ever seen him move. His face was pale, his hand pressed against his stomach, and his expression suggested he was fighting a battle he wasn't going to win. He made it halfway to his car before doubling over in the parking lot. What happened next was exactly what I'd hoped for, and I recorded every second of it on my phone. Troy spent the next 20 minutes alternating between his car and the bushes beside the gym, experiencing what could only be described as digestive chaos. Other gym members stopped to ask if he needed help, but Troy was too embarrassed to explain what was happening. I uploaded the video to our neighborhood's private social media group with the caption, "Troy Callahan having some kind of medical emergency at the gym tonight. Hope he's okay." The responses were immediate: concern, offers to help, suggestions to call 911. Amanda even commented, worried about her husband's health. But Natalie Henderson saw right through it. Her comment appeared an hour later. Interesting timing, considering what I heard about Troy and certain married women in the neighborhood. By Tuesday morning, the video had been viewed 127 times by our neighbors, friends, and acquaintances. Troy's reputation as the smooth-talking finance guy was replaced by his new identity as the man who'd had explosive diarrhea in a public parking lot. Julia called me that afternoon. "What did you do to Troy?" she demanded. "I have no idea what you're talking about," I replied innocently. "Is Troy having problems? I heard he had some kind of medical emergency." "You know exactly what I'm talking about, Mark. This isn't funny." "You're right," I agreed. "Adultery isn't funny. It's pathetic." Julia hung up, but I wasn't finished with either of them. Wednesday evening, I drove to the Marriott downtown, the same hotel where Julia and Troy had been meeting for months, according to their text messages. The same hotel where they'd spent my money on their affair. I knew they met on Thursdays, but I wanted to scout the location first. The Marriott had a bar on the ground floor, a restaurant, and a lobby that was perfect for observing without being noticed. I ordered a drink and waited. Sure enough, at 7:30 p.m., Julia walked through the front entrance wearing a dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. She looked nervous, checking her phone constantly, glancing around the lobby like she expected to see someone she knew. Troy arrived 15 minutes later, looking like a man who'd spent the previous day recovering from food poisoning. He was pale, moving carefully, and clearly not at his usual confident best. They met at the bar, ordered drinks, and sat in a corner booth where they thought they had privacy. I positioned myself at a table with a clear view of their conversation and activated the voice recording app on my phone. "This is getting out of hand," Troy was saying. "Amanda's asking questions about the gym incident, and people are starting to talk." "Mark knows," Julia replied. "He found my phone, he has screenshots, and he's been systematically destroying my life for the past week." "What kind of screenshots?" Julia's face flushed. "All of them, Troy. Every message, every photo, every detail about us." Troy's face went white. "The photos? Julia, those were private." "Nothing's private anymore," she said bitterly. "He's turned everyone against me. I can't show my face at the country club, I'm uninvited from social events, and even my own sister is taking his side." "We need to fight back," Troy said, leaning across the table. "We need to make him stop." "How?" Julia asked. "He's got evidence of everything. He's got lawyers, he's got money, and he's got everyone's sympathy because I'm the cheating wife." Troy was quiet for a long moment, thinking. What if we made him look bad? What if we found something to use against him? Like what? I don't know. Everyone has secrets. We just need to find his. I smiled, finishing my drink. They had no idea that their biggest secret was sitting 20 feet away, recording every word of their conversation. I left the hotel before they did, but not before leaving a surprise in Troy's car. I'd noticed he never locked it, probably because he assumed hotel parking was secure. Inside his glove compartment, I left a printed copy of every text message he'd exchanged with Julia, along with a note. "Your wife deserves to know the truth. So does mine." Thursday morning, Amanda Callahan knocked on my front door at 8 a.m. She was still wearing her hospital scrubs from the night shift, her eyes red from crying, holding a stack of papers I recognized immediately. "Mark," she said quietly, "we need to talk." I invited her in, made coffee, and listened while Amanda told me about finding the evidence in Troy's car, confronting her husband, and learning the truth about his Thursday night activities. "I'm filing for divorce," she said. "I wanted you to know that someone else is going through this too." Amanda left an hour later, but not before giving me copies of Troy's financial records, his work schedule, and his personal information. She was angry, hurt, and ready to make sure Troy faced consequences for his choices. That afternoon, I received a text from Julia. "We need to meet. This has gone far enough." I replied, "You're right. It has gone far enough, but it's not over yet." Because I was just getting started. Julia's desperation was becoming obvious to everyone except Julia herself. She'd been calling mutual friends, trying to rebuild bridges she'd burned with her affair, but the neighborhood gossip network had already convicted her in the court of suburban opinion. Thursday evening, she showed up at my front door wearing the kind of outfit that used to work on me. The black dress from our honeymoon trip, the perfume I'd bought her for Christmas, the smile that had convinced me to propose 5 years ago. "Mark, can I come in? I think we should talk about this situation like mature adults." I let her in, curious to see what her strategy would be. Julia had always been good at manipulation, but she'd never tried it on someone who knew all her tricks. She sat on our couch, my couch now, and arranged herself in the pose she used when she wanted something. Legs crossed, leaning forward just enough, voice soft and apologetic. "I've been thinking about us," she began, "about what we had, what we could have again. I made a mistake, Mark, a terrible mistake, but it doesn't have to define our entire marriage." I sat across from her, phone recording in my shirt pocket. "Go on." Troy means nothing to me, she continued, tears starting to form in her eyes. He was just a distraction, a way to feel young again, to feel desired. But what we have is real. What we built together is worth fighting for. What did we build together, Julia? This house, our life, our future. We can work through this. Couples do it all the time. We can go to counseling, we can start over, we can pretend you didn't cheat on me for months while planning to take half of everything I own? Julia's composure cracked slightly. That's not what I was doing. Then explain the text messages about getting what you deserve and making sure you're taken care of when this is over. Explain the conversations with your lawyer about asset division and alimony calculations. Her face went pale. She hadn't realized I'd found those messages too. You've been planning this for months, Julia. The affair, the divorce, the financial arrangements. The only thing you didn't plan for was getting caught before you were ready. Julia stood up, abandoning her seduction strategy. Fine. You want to know the truth? Yes, I was planning to leave you. Yes, I was making sure I'd be financially secure afterward. But that's because I knew you'd try to punish me for being unhappy. Unhappy with what exactly? With this, she gestured around the room. With this boring suburban life, with your boring job, with your boring friends and your boring hobbies and your complete lack of ambition. I smiled. Keep going. You've never wanted anything more than this mediocre existence. You're content to come home every day, watch television, and pretend that paying a mortgage is the same thing as living. I wanted more, Mark. I deserved more. Like Troy Callahan? Troy understands me. He appreciates me. He makes me feel alive in ways you never could. I stopped the recording. Thank you. For what? For admitting that you were never going to be satisfied with our marriage, that you planned to cheat and steal from me, and that you think I deserve to be betrayed because I'm boring. That's going to be very helpful in court. Julia realized her mistake immediately. You recorded me. I recorded a woman who broke into my house and tried to seduce me while admitting to adultery and premeditated fraud. Yes. She tried to grab my phone, but I'd already backed up the recording to 3 different cloud accounts. Her desperation was almost pathetic. You can't use that against me. Watch me. Julia left without another word, but I knew she'd be back. Desperate people do desperate things, and Julia was running out of options. Friday morning, I decided to escalate things. Julia worked for Premier Properties, the most prestigious real estate agency in our area. Her reputation was everything in that business, and reputation was something I could definitely affect. I created an anonymous email account and sent a message to Julia's boss, Margaret Winters, along with selected screenshots of Julia's text messages that showed her using company time and resources to conduct her affair. The messages clearly showed Julia scheduling property showings that were actually hotel meetings with Troy, using the company car for personal business, and lying to clients about her availability while she was engaged in extramarital activities. By noon, Julia had been suspended pending an investigation into her professional conduct. She called me immediately. You cost me my job, she screamed into the phone. You cost yourself your job when you decided to use it as a cover for cheating on your husband. I'll sue you for harassment. With what money? And what lawyer? Good luck explaining to a judge why your husband is harassing you by exposing your adultery. That afternoon, I drove to Troy's office building in downtown Hartford. Callahan Financial Services occupied a suite on the 15th floor, and Troy's name was on the directory as a senior investment advisor. I'd done my research on Troy's professional situation. He worked for a conservative firm that valued reputation and client trust above everything else. His boss, Richard Steinberg, was old school, married 43 years, active in his church, and known for his strict moral standards. I didn't need to do anything dramatic. I simply scheduled a consultation appointment with Mr. Steinberg, brought printed copies of Troy's text messages with Julia, and explained that I was concerned about trusting my investment portfolio to a man who was conducting an affair with a married woman and discussing financial strategies for helping her hide assets from her husband. "I'm not trying to cause trouble," I told Steinberg, "but I thought you should know what kind of person you have representing your firm." Steinberg read through the messages with the expression of a man who'd just discovered termites in his foundation. "Mr. Bishop, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. We'll handle this matter internally." Troy was suspended that afternoon. By evening, both Julia and Troy were unemployed, publicly humiliated, and facing divorce proceedings from their respective spouses. But I wasn't finished yet. Saturday morning, I received a text from Troy. "We need to talk. Meet me at Riverside Park at 2 p.m. Come alone." I replied, "See you there." Riverside Park was public, well populated on weekends, and had excellent cell phone coverage for recording conversations. It was the perfect place for Troy to make whatever threats he was planning to make. He was waiting by the playground, wearing sunglasses and looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. His usual confidence was gone, replaced by the desperate energy of someone whose life was falling apart. "This needs to stop," he said when I approached. "What needs to stop?" "You know what? The harassment, the sabotage, the public humiliation. Julia and I made a mistake, but we don't deserve this." "You made a mistake?" I laughed. "Troy, you conducted a months-long affair with my wife, helped her plan to steal my assets, and destroyed 2 marriages. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. We're both adults. These things happen. These things happen to people who let them happen. I didn't let them happen." Troy stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his size. "Back off, Mark. I'm warning you. Leave us alone, or I'll make sure you regret it." "How?" "I know people. I have connections. I can make your life very difficult." I activated my phone's recording app. "Is that a threat, Troy?" "It's a promise. Stop messing with us, or I'll destroy your career, your reputation, and everything else you think you've protected." "Interesting," I said, "because I think you just made a very serious mistake." Troy's face changed as he realized what he'd just said in public to a man who'd already demonstrated his ability to gather and use evidence. "You're recording this. I'm documenting this. Just like I documented your affair with my wife, your professional misconduct, and your pattern of making threats when you don't get your way." Troy tried to grab my phone, but I was ready for that. I stepped back, held the phone up high, and spoke loudly enough for other park visitors to hear. "Troy Callahan is trying to steal my phone after threatening to destroy my career because I exposed his affair with my wife." Several people turned to look, including a jogger who stopped to see if I needed help. Troy realized he was making things worse and backed away. "This isn't over." "You're right," I agreed. "It's not over, but it's about to get much worse for you." That evening, I uploaded the recording to our neighborhood social media group with the caption, "Troy Callahan threatening me in Riverside Park today because I exposed his affair with my wife. Is this the kind of man we want in our community?" The response was immediate and overwhelming. Support for me, condemnation for Troy, and calls for him to be banned from neighborhood events and activities. But more importantly, I sent the recording to Troy's boss, his wife's divorce lawyer, and the police as documentation of harassment and threats. By Sunday morning, Troy Callahan had become the most hated man in our subdivision, and Julia had become a social pariah who couldn't show her face at the grocery store without facing whispers and stares. But I still had one more surprise planned for both of them. Monday morning brought rain, the kind of steady Connecticut drizzle that made everything look gray and miserable. Perfect weather for what I had planned. I'd spent Sunday preparing for the final phase of my revenge against Julia and Troy. Everything up to this point had been systematic destruction of their reputations, careers, and social standing. But I wanted one last public humiliation that would cement their status as the neighborhood's most despised couple. Julia had been staying at a cheap extended-stay hotel since I'd kicked her out of the house. Troy was sleeping in his office since Amanda had changed the locks and filed a restraining order. They were both desperate, unemployed, and running out of options. That's when desperate people make their biggest mistakes. Tuesday afternoon, I received a text from Julia. "I'm coming to get the rest of my things tomorrow at 3 p.m. You can't stop me." I replied, "The restraining order I filed yesterday says otherwise, but feel free to try." Of course, there was no restraining order. But Julia didn't know that, and her response told me everything I needed to know about her mental state. What restraining order? You can't get a restraining order against your own wife. Ex-wife, I corrected. Divorce was finalized this morning. Check your email. Another lie, but a believable one. Julia's panic was immediate and predictable. "That's impossible. I never signed anything." "You signed the prenup. That's all I needed." Within an hour, Julia was calling every lawyer in Hartford, trying to verify information that didn't exist, but her panic led her to make exactly the mistake I was hoping for. Wednesday, at 2:45 p.m., Julia and Troy pulled into my driveway in Troy's car. They sat there for 10 minutes, probably arguing about their strategy, before approaching my front door. I was ready for them. I'd invited Pete and his crew to do some landscaping work in my front yard. Work that happened to require them to be visible from the street with shovels, rakes, and other tools that made them look appropriately intimidating. I'd also invited Natalie Henderson and 3 other neighborhood women to come over for coffee at 3 p.m., ensuring there would be witnesses to whatever Julia and Troy were planning. And I'd set up my phone to live stream everything to the neighborhood social media group. Julia pounded on my front door while Troy stood behind her, trying to look threatening, but mostly looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. "Mark, open this door right now," Julia shouted. "I have rights, and I'm not leaving without my things." I opened the door just wide enough to speak through the gap. "You don't have any rights to this house, Julia, and you don't have any things here that aren't already boxed up on the porch. I want my grandmother's jewelry, my photo albums, Your grandmother's jewelry was a gift to both of us. It stays with the house. Your photo albums are in box number 3, and your personal items are exactly what I said they were. Personal items that you personally purchased with your personal money." Troy stepped forward, trying to use his size to intimidate me. "Just give her what she wants, so we can all move on with our lives." "I'm sorry. Who are you?" I asked loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. "Are you the man who was sleeping with my wife, or are you her new boyfriend, or are you just some random guy who threatens homeowners in their own driveways?" "You know who I am," Troy said. "I know you're a cheater, a liar, and a man who makes threats when he doesn't get his way. But I don't know why you think you have any say in what happens between me and my ex-wife." Julia tried to push past me into the house, but I was ready for that too. I stepped back and let her stumble into the foyer, where she found herself face to face with Pete, Natalie, and 3 other women who were all staring at her with expressions ranging from disgust to pity. "Hi, Julia," Natalie said sweetly. "We were just talking about you." Julia's face went red. She'd walked into a trap, and she knew it. "Get out of my house," she demanded. "It's not your house anymore," Pete replied calmly. "And these ladies are guests of the actual homeowner." Troy followed Julia into the foyer, looking around at the assembled witnesses with growing alarm. "This is harassment." "No," I said. "Harassment is what you did when you threatened me in Riverside Park. This is just a social gathering that you crashed by forcing your way into my home." Julia grabbed one of the boxes from the porch and started going through it frantically. "Where's my jewelry box? Where are my winter clothes? Where's my—" "Your jewelry box is empty because the jewelry was gifts from my family. Your winter clothes are at the hotel where you've been living, and whatever else you're looking for probably doesn't belong to you anymore." "This is theft," Julia screamed. "This is the consequence of adultery," Natalie corrected. "Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on your husband with the neighbor." Troy stepped toward Natalie, his face angry. "Mind your own business, lady." My business is protecting my friends from people like you, Natalie replied, not backing down. And right now, my friend needs protection from a cheating wife and her boyfriend who are trespassing in his home. That's when Troy made his biggest mistake. He grabbed Natalie's arm and tried to push her aside. Pete moved faster than I'd ever seen him move. One moment Troy was reaching for Natalie. The next moment he was on the floor with Pete's hand on his chest, and Pete's voice explaining the situation very clearly. Son, you just put your hands on a woman in another man's house without permission. In my world, that makes you a problem that needs solving. Troy tried to get up, but Pete's hand pressed him back down. I'd stay right there if I were you, at least until the police arrive. What police? Troy asked. The ones Natalie just called to report a domestic disturbance and assault? Julia looked around the room at the faces staring back at her, Pete's crew watching from the doorway, the neighborhood women recording everything on their phones, and me standing in the middle of it all with the expression of a man whose plan had worked perfectly. This isn't over, she said, but her voice had lost its conviction. You're right, I agreed. It's not over. It's finished. There's a difference. The police arrived 20 minutes later to find Troy sitting on my porch under Pete's supervision, Julia crying in her car, and 6 witnesses ready to testify that both of them had forced their way into my home and assaulted my guests. No charges were filed, but the incident report was public record, and the video footage was already circulating through our social networks. By evening, Julia and Troy had become the most talked-about story in our subdivision's history, not the kind of attention either of them wanted. Thursday morning, I received 2 text messages. The first was from Julia. I'm leaving town. You win. The second was from Troy. Amanda's keeping the house. I'm moving back to Boston. This is over. I replied to both with the same message. It was over the moment you decided to betray people who trusted you. Everything since then was just cleanup. That afternoon, I sat on my front porch with a beer, watching the rain wash away the last traces of the drama that had consumed my life for the past 3 weeks. Pete joined me, carrying his own beer and wearing the satisfied expression of a man who'd helped his brother solve a problem. Think they learned anything? He asked. They learned that actions have consequences, I replied. Whether they learned anything useful is up to them. What's next for you? I thought about that question for a long moment. 3 weeks ago, I'd been a married man living a comfortable suburban life with a woman I thought I knew. Now I was divorced, living alone, and famous throughout our neighborhood as the man who'd systematically destroyed 2 cheaters without breaking a single law. I'm going to enjoy being right, I said finally. Pete laughed. You always were good at solving problems. This wasn't a problem, I corrected. This was a system that needed debugging. I just removed the corrupted files and restored it to proper working order. As if to punctuate my point, my phone buzzed with a notification from the neighborhood social media group. Someone had posted a video of Troy's moving truck leaving his driveway with the caption, "Good riddance to bad rubbish." I smiled, finished my beer, and went inside my house, to start figuring out what came next for a man who'd just won the most important fight of his life. The rain stopped, the sun came out, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of my neighbors going about their normal suburban lives, probably grateful that the drama was finally over and justice had been served. I'd solved the problem. The system was clean, and for the first time in months, everything was working exactly the way it was supposed to work.